They say they have a lead, a place where investigators quietly believe they may find answers about baby Emmanuel Haro, but they refuse to tell the public where that place is. That silence is not indifference. It is a deliberate strategy designed to protect fragile evidence, preserve legal defensibility, and ensure that anything recovered will survive the scrutiny of a courtroom and the corrosive effect of social media rumor. If you want to follow every verified development in this case, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell now so you get first-hand updates as new facts are confirmed. What is happening now unfolds mostly away from cameras and hashtags. Detectives are testing a tip, mapping a search area, assembling specialized teams, and lining up the legal paperwork that allows them to excavate a site properly. That work is slow, technical, and often invisible, and that invisibility frustrates families and neighbors who want answers. But investigators stress that the choice to withhold location details is not a matter of secrecy for secrecy's sake. It is a practical measure grounded in decades of forensic experience and hard lessons about how evidence can be destroyed by the curious, the well-meaning, or the malicious if a site becomes public before it is secured. Forensic scenes must be controlled to produce reliable proof. A single footprint, a cigarette butt, a tire track, or a flashlight beam can contaminate biological traces, smear latent DNA, or blur soil patterns that help forensic anthropologists determine whether something was recently disturbed. Even the passage of dozens of people over a site can redistribute insects and accelerate decomposition patterns, altering the scientific story the remains and the environment tell. Defense attorneys will look for any opening, any missed protocol or unexplained gap in documentation, and they can use even innocent interference to sow reasonable doubt. Prosecutors know this, and they know that an improperly preserved scene can turn a potentially compelling case into one that collapses when challenged in court. That explains why investigators insist on a controlled approach. Contain the scene, document every step, and limit access to a vetted, essential team until the recovery is complete. Mapping and containment are hardly romantic tasks. They begin with satellite and aerial imagery, topographic maps, and environmental assessments. Teams identify property boundaries, sensitive ecological zones, and likely places where a suspect might hide an item or body. They consult with landfill experts if the lead touches municipal waste, with archaeologists if the ground may hide objects in stratified layers, and with environmental regulators if excavation risks releasing methane or disturbing protected wildlife. Often, permits must be obtained, landowners notified in a controlled way, and local agencies coordinated so heavy machinery can be brought in safely. If the site is public, additional police resources are required to keep the curious at bay and to ensure evidence is not lost to onlookers. The slower this preparatory work is done, the more defensible the eventual discovery will be, and that is the overriding priority. Confidentiality also serves to filter the flow of information. High-profile investigations attract a flood of tips, many sincere, some mistaken, and some intentionally misleading. When investigators disclose a specific location publicly, they invite a torrent of leads that must be chased, many of which waste time and resource. Filtering starts by keeping the most sensitive details within a small circle of investigators who can verify facts against digital records, call logs, surveillance footage, and vehicle telematics. Only information that survives that first layer of verification is used to expand the search. That process helps avoid chasing down hundreds of spurious claims that do nothing but distract from a focused, corroborated effort. A suspect's statements, especially jailhouse comments, must be carefully cross-checked before they form the basis for public action. When a suspect indicates a place or gives a clue, detectives translate vague phrases into geographic coordinates, cross-reference those coordinates with cell tower pings, and compare them with license plate reads or business transaction records. They use mapping software to model possible routes and to understand whether a given description fits known movement patterns. Canine units may be dispatched covertly to indicate scent. Drones provide an aerial perspective that reveals soil disturbance invisible at ground level. Thermal imaging can highlight recent Earth movement. Only when multiple, independent signals converge do investigators commit to the expense and environmental disruption of an excavation. That verification happens quietly because revealing the method can reveal the site. Maintaining the chain of custody is the central legal concern that drives much of the secrecy. The legal system requires a clear paper trail for every item collected: who found it, who packaged it, how it was transported, where it was stored, and who analyzed it. That trail must be impeccable. Any gap can be seized upon by defense counsel to argue evidence tampering or contamination. Investigators therefore limit access to the scene to those who are trained and documented in evidence handling procedures. When items are removed, they are bagged, sealed, photographed with multiple timestamps, and logged into evidence databases. Trucks or personnel transporting items to forensic labs follow strict protocols. All of this procedural discipline underlies a single imperative: make sure that if something is found, it will be admissible, credible, and persuasive in court. Keeping a site confidential also aims to protect the integrity of witness testimony. Public speculation can alter the memories of witnesses and even the content of tips. Social media repeats and refines narratives until those narratives shape perception. People who would otherwise recall an exact detail may begin to remember a version of events that matches the dominant online story rather than their lived experience. Investigators prefer to capture raw, independent accounts before rumor contaminates them. By limiting public disclosure, law enforcement reduces the risk that collective speculation will rewrite what individuals remember and therefore ensures the evidence they gather remains as untainted as possible. Tactical escalation, the use of drones, cadaver dogs, and specialized search teams, is a practical indicator that leads may be narrowing. Drones offer high-resolution orthomosaic imagery that allows teams to map a site precisely, detect subtle ground depressions, and plan excavation grids. Thermal imaging from the air can reveal anomalies that suggest soil has been disturbed recently. Cadaver dogs, when handled by certified teams, can indicate the presence of human remains even when they are below the surface or concealed. These tools do not provide definitive proof alone, but when they repeatedly queue in the same area, they create a compelling case to proceed. The presence of the suspect, whether escorted by investigators to point out a location or implicated through digital evidence, intensifies the focus. Yet even then, the operation is orchestrated to ensure every move is documented, every find photographed from multiple angles, and every item logged to maintain evidentiary continuity. Why all of this matters in practice? Imagine a search announced publicly where hundreds of onlookers arrive with phones and dogs, attracted by the news. They trample the area, leave behind bottles and cigarette butts, and pick up small objects they think look relevant. What started as a promising lead becomes a chaotic mess that forensic teams cannot untangle. Biological traces become mixed with DNA from dozens of strangers, soil layers are disturbed, insect patterns change. The potential for a prosecutable case diminishes. That scenario is not hypothetical. It has played out in past investigations and has taught law enforcement a hard lesson: discover quietly, secure thoroughly, and disclose carefully. There is also the danger of false confessions and manipulated testimony. When a suspect knows the public pressure around a case, they can manipulate information given to jailhouse informants or casual conversations to create confusion or to distract investigators. Investigators therefore corroborate suspect-driven leads with hard data, phone pings, credit card transactions, toll transponders, and surveillance camera footage before acting. Even then, corroboration is corroboration, not proof. Physical recovery that can be tied to the documentary evidence is what ultimately binds a case together. The public understandably chafes at this procedural caution. Families want answers, and communities want closure. Silence feels like indifference to people who are grieving. That is why investigators strive to provide periodic, carefully framed public updates, confirming that searches are ongoing, reporting that specialized units are deployed, or announcing arrests or warrants issued. Those updates aim to reassure without revealing sensitive tactical details that would compromise the investigation. The balance is not easy to maintain, and mistakes on either side, premature disclosure or excessive secrecy, can erode public trust. Historical records play a critical role in how prosecutors plan to present any recovery in court. A cloth fragment or a personal item found at a site is not compelling by itself. Its significance depends on how it fits into a broader narrative supported by purchase records, photographs, witness statements, and prior incidents recorded in case files. Prosecutors and investigators work to align physical finds with a timeline. When was the item bought? Who last handled it? Where was it seen in photos? And what do medical or social service records say about the child's condition leading up to the reported disappearance? This integration strengthens the evidentiary value of any discovery because it ties the physical to the personal, the material to the documentary. Lessons learned from past investigations have shaped modern strategy. In earlier cases where locations were disclosed too quickly, evidence was compromised, or chain of custody questions undermined prosecutions, the consequences were severe. Those failed prosecutions taught law enforcement that success is not simply about finding an answer. It is about finding an answer in a form that will hold up in court. That lesson is why current investigators emphasize restraint and thoroughness. The public may want the sensational rush of breaking news, but justice requires methodical care. Another practical reason for withholding a site is to limit the risk of vigilante interference. In high-emotion cases, people sometimes act on rumor and attempt to take matters into their own hands. That can endanger lives, destroy evidence, and spark legal consequences for individuals who interfere. Law enforcement sees this risk and prioritizes protecting both the integrity of the scene and the safety of the public. Keeping site details confidential reduces the chance that someone will attempt an unlawful search or engage in dangerous behavior that obstructs justice. There are also environmental and logistical concerns that make secrecy sensible. Digging into certain soils can release hazardous gases in pockets, require careful shoring to prevent canyon-like collapse, or disturb protected flora and fauna. Agencies must coordinate with environmental regulators and land managers to ensure excavations comply with state and federal law. Those clearances take time. Making the details public before the necessary safeguards are in place could lead to delays, confusion, or illegal entry. Investigators prefer to secure all the logistical and regulatory elements before announcing where and when the work will occur. Caution does not mean inactivity. Indeed, the escalation of resources, additional detectives, forensic anthropologists, forensic archaeologists, cadaver teams, and drone units, indicates a decision to invest significant manpower and technical capability. That investment signals two things. First, that investigators believe the lead is worth pursuing. Second, that they understand the job requires methodical precision. Every piece of evidence, every timestamp, and every recorded transfer must be defensible. That is the cost of doing justice in a system that values both due process and the protection of victims. Public patience is hard but essential in this context. The insistence on immediate information amplified by social media can create pressure to act prematurely. Yet rushed actions have historically led to compromised cases and, tragically, to missed opportunities to hold the responsible parties to account. Investigators ask for trust not because they want credit for secrecy but because they want to ensure that when answers finally come, they are the kind that will support a legal resolution and provide lasting closure rather than a headline that unravels later under cross-examination. What can the public do to help while the work proceeds quietly? Preserve information. If you have a dashcam video, a timestamped photo, a receipt, or any verifiable detail, do not post it widely online. Submit it directly to the homicide unit suggested by authorities. Investigators can validate metadata, check geolocation tags, and integrate that information into their grid planning. Verified materials are far more useful than 1,000 speculative posts. Likewise, resist circulating unvetted claims. Such rumors can taint witness memories and misdirect valuable resources. There is also an ethical dimension to the choice to withhold details. Families of victims deserve compassion, transparency about major milestones, and assurance that the search is active. Yet these needs must be balanced against the obligation to protect the integrity of the evidence and to preserve the chain of custody. Investigators try to walk this line by offering regular, factual updates about the status of searches and about opportunities for the public to provide tips. That measured transparency seeks to honor both the public's right to know and the public's need for a process that yields results that will stand up in court. Ultimately, the decision to keep the possible remains site confidential is a reflection of priorities: the primacy of evidence integrity, the need for legal durability, and the desire to avoid repeating past errors that cost cases scorable victories in headlines but nothing in convictions. When investigators finally announce a discovery, the announcement will be backed by meticulous documentation, photographs taken before and after recovery, chain of custody logs, laboratory results, and the documentary context that links the material evidence to the history of the case. That document trail is what transforms a discovery into proof that can hold up in court and, perhaps more importantly, deliver a measure of accountability and closure for those who have been waiting in painful uncertainty. For now, investigators continue to prepare, verify, and plan. They check telematics, review phone pings, consult with ecological and archaeological experts, and move specialized teams into position on standby. They build the legal scaffolding, search warrants, property access orders, and interagency memoranda that will allow them to act decisively when the moment is right. That patience is not passive. It is a deliberate posture rooted in the hard necessities of forensic science and the procedural demands of a fair trial. When authorities do finally report what they have found, the goal will be to present evidence in a way that is unassailable, linked by chain of custody, corroborated by multiple independent sources, and framed inside a timeline that shows how physical items connect to the documentary record. That outcome is the only kind of closure that matters in a legal sense. It is also the only kind likely to stand the test of scrutiny so that justice can be done, not just sensational headlines, but accountable, enduring decisions grounded in corroborated facts. Until that time arrives, the community's most helpful role is to support careful investigation, preserve potential evidence, submit credible tips directly to law enforcement, and avoid amplifying speculation. The work happening in the quiet is painstaking because the stakes are enormous. The methods are slow because the methods must be precise. The silence, uncomfortable though it is for those who ache for answers, is meant to protect the one thing that can transform hurt into resolution: reliable evidence.